Genghis Khan, the conqueror who created the modern world. The year was 1221. A Persian chronicler stood trembling in the ruins of what had been one of Central Asia's most magnificent cities. Bodies littered the streets. The magnificent irrigation systems that had fed millions lay shattered. As he surveyed the apocalyptic scene, he wrote words that would echo through history. They came, they sapped, they burnt, they slew, they plundered, and they departed. But here's what that chronicler couldn't have known. The man who ordered this destruction would ultimately create the very world we inhabit today. The boy who survived. Before he was Genghis Khan, he was Temüjin, a 9-year-old boy clutching his younger siblings in the frozen Mongolian steppe, abandoned by his tribe after his father's murder. His crime? Being born into a world where mercy was weakness and survival meant everything. Picture this. A child so desperate for food that he killed his own half-brother over a fish. Monstrous? Perhaps. But here's the twist. That capacity for ruthless pragmatism would transform into something the world had never seen. A meritocracy that shattered every social convention of the medieval world. Most conquerors are born into power. Genghis Khan seized it from nothing. The code that changed everything. In 1206, when Temüjin was proclaimed Genghis Khan, universal ruler, he did something revolutionary. He didn't just unite the Mongolian tribes through force, he rewrote the social contract. The Yasa, his legal code, was brutal by our standards. Steal a horse? Death. Commit adultery? Death. But embedded within this harshness was a radical vision. Promotion based on merit, not birth. A shepherd who showed courage could become a general. Religious tolerance wasn't just permitted, it was enforced. Women could own property, refuse marriages, and even lead in their husband's absence. Wait, religious tolerance in the 13th century? While Europe was burning heretics and the Islamic world was fragmenting into sectarian conflicts, Genghis Khan's empire exempted all religious leaders from taxes and declared that all religions were to be respected. This wasn't enlightened philosophy. It was strategic genius. The war machine. Here's where the story gets darker. The Mongol military wasn't just effective, it was terrifyingly innovative. They turned warfare into science. Their composite bows could pierce armor at 200 yards. Their ponies were trained to let riders sleep in the saddle during forced marches. They pioneered psychological warfare, sending spies ahead to spread tales of Mongol invincibility, offering cities a choice. Surrender immediately and be spared, or resist and face total annihilation. The numbers are staggering. When the city of Nishapur killed Genghis Khan's favorite son-in-law in battle, the Khan ordered every living thing in the city destroyed. His daughter allegedly oversaw the execution, demanding that the dead be stacked and their heads counted. The reported toll, 1,747,000 people. Scholars debate these numbers. Medieval chroniclers had a flair for exaggeration. But even conservative estimates suggest the Mongol conquests killed approximately 40 million people, roughly 11% of the world's population at the time. To put that in perspective, that's proportionally more deadly than World War II. The paradox at history's heart. But here's where our story takes an unexpected turn. This man, who created pyramids of skulls and raised entire civilizations, simultaneously engineered the greatest exchange of ideas, technologies, and cultures the medieval world had ever seen. The Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace, created a zone of stability across Asia that allowed a Venetian merchant named Marco Polo to travel from Europe to China and back. For the first time in history, you could journey from the Pacific to the Mediterranean under a single administrative system with standardized laws, paper currency, and diplomatic passports. Think about that. Paper money, which China had developed, spread westward. Gunpowder followed the same route. Persian astronomy reached China. Chinese printing techniques reached the Middle East. The magnetic compass, noodles, playing cards, tea culture, all hitched rides along Mongol roads. The Renaissance, that great flowering of European culture, it might never have happened without the influx of knowledge from the East, that the Mongol Empire facilitated. The genetic legacy. In 2003, geneticists dropped a bombshell. Approximately 16 million men alive today, roughly 1 in 200 men worldwide, carry identical Y chromosome sequences suggesting they descend from a single ancestor who lived about 1,000 years ago in Mongolia. Genghis Khan, it seems, is quite literally the ancestor of millions. This revelation forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about conquest and legacy. Those genetic lines didn't spread through romance. They spread through the systematic rape and concubinage that accompanied Mongol conquests. Yet those same descendants today include doctors, teachers, artists, and peacemakers who have nothing to do with their ancestors' violence. How do we reconcile this? The systems that endure. Strip away the mythology and the horror, and you find something unexpected. Genghis Khan was fundamentally a state builder. His innovations in military organization, communications, and administration became templates for future empires. His courier system, the Yam, used relay stations every 20-30 miles, allowing messages to travel 200 miles per day, unthinkable speed for the era. This system inspired postal services from Russia to Persia. His military's decimal organization, units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000, allowed for unprecedented coordination across vast distances. Later armies from the Ottomans to the Russians adopted similar structures. His promotion of merchants and trade created a proto-globalized economy. His standardization of weights and measures facilitated commerce across continents. These weren't innovations born from humanistic ideals. They were practical solutions to the problem of controlling the largest contiguous land empire in human history. At its peak, encompassing 24 million square kilometers, nearly the size of Africa. The question that haunts history. Was Genghis Khan a monster or a visionary? A destroyer or a creator? The historian in me says, both. And that's precisely what makes him so significant. He operated in an era when brutality was standard currency in warfare. The Crusaders sacked Jerusalem. The Chinese dynasties executed entire clans of rivals. Medieval European nobles burned villages as a matter of course. Genghis Khan's violence differed in scale and efficiency, not in kind, but his legacy transcends his brutality. The modern concept of diplomatic immunity, rooted in Mongol practices, international postal systems, Mongol innovation, the idea that talent matters more than birth, radically advanced by Mongol meritocracy. Even his environmental impact fascinates modern researchers. Some scientists argue that the Mongol conquests, by depopulating vast agricultural regions and allowing forests to regrow, actually removed enough carbon from the atmosphere to cause measurable global cooling. The mirror we fear to face. Perhaps Genghis Khan disturbs us precisely because he embodies an uncomfortable truth about human civilization. Sometimes the greatest leaps forward are built on the greatest atrocities. The Mongol Empire didn't create the modern world despite its brutality. In many ways, it did so through it. The cities that were destroyed were rebuilt as cosmopolitan centers of trade. The populations that were displaced mixed, creating new cultures and ideas. The terror that preceded Mongol armies convinced later opponents to surrender without fight, ultimately reducing overall casualties and facilitating the stability needed for cultural exchange. This doesn't justify the horror, but it complicates our narratives about progress. The ending we inherited. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, possibly from injuries sustained falling from a horse, he was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere in Mongolia that has never been found. According to legend, the funeral escort killed anyone who witnessed the procession, and then those soldiers were killed in turn, ensuring the location remained secret. Even in death, mystery and ruthlessness prevailed. But his empire fragmented, as all empires do. His grandsons fought over succession. Within a century, the unified Mongol Empire had splintered into competing khanates. The Pax Mongolica collapsed. The Black Death, traveling along those same trade routes the Mongols had secured, devastated Eurasia. Yet even in dissolution, the Mongol legacy endured. The Mughal Empire that would rule India, descended from Mongol lineage. The Russian state emerged partly in response to Mongol occupation. The Chinese Ming dynasty defined itself in opposition to Mongol rule, yet adopted many Mongol administrative practices. Today, we live in a world of global trade, instant communication, and cultural exchange, a world that first took shape under the shadow of Mongol horses. Our passports, our postal systems, our assumption that merit should trump birth, our globally connected economy, all bear faint fingerprints from that orphaned boy on the steppe who decided the world needed reshaping. Genghis Khan didn't just conquer the world. He made it unrecognizable, stitched it together through terror and pragmatism, and forced humanity forward whether it wanted to go or not. That's something more unsettling. It's history in its rawest form, reminding us that the world we inherited was built by human hands that were never clean.